There are moments in a person's life that divide everything into before and after. Before the silence and after the answer. Before the closed door and after the one that swings open with no warning. Before the long night and after the morning that no one believed was still coming. You are standing in one of those moments right now. Not approaching it, not almost there. You are standing inside it, and years from today, when you look back over the entire landscape of your life and trace the line between everything that was heavy and everything that finally shifted, you will bring that line back to this exact moment, this Monday, July 25th, and what God is speaking into your spirit through this very message. I need you to understand something before we go any further. You did not find this video. This video found you. There are millions of pieces of content moving through the world at this very second, and out of all of them, this one stopped in front of you. That is not an accident. That is not an algorithm. That is an appointment. Heaven does not schedule appointments for people who are finished. Heaven schedules appointments for people who are about to begin. Beloved and chosen one, I want to speak directly to you right now, not to a crowd, not to a general audience, but to you specifically, the one who has been carrying something in silence that most people around you have not been able to see. I want to ask you something, and I want you to let the question land before you answer it. How long have you been holding on? How many mornings have you opened your eyes and reached for the same hope you went to sleep holding, wondering if today might finally be the day? How many times have you almost said out loud that you were done, only to find something quiet and stubborn inside you that refused to let go? That quiet, stubborn thing is not weakness dressed up as strength. It is a sign. It is one of the clearest signs that you carry something most people will never understand. Because most people, when the waiting goes this long, walk away. But chosen ones do not walk away. They do not always know why they are still standing. They do not always feel strong. But they stay. And staying, when everything visible says there is nothing left to stay for, is one of the rarest and most sacred things a human being can do. Let me name some of what you have been experiencing, because I believe if someone had named it sooner, the road would have felt a little less lonely. First, your dreams have been changing, not becoming darker, but becoming clearer, more specific. You wake up from them sometimes with a feeling you cannot name, something between grief and certainty, as if you were shown something that has not happened yet, but is already real. Second, you have noticed that certain relationships, certain rooms, certain conversations that used to feel comfortable now feel tight, like a coat you have outgrown that no longer fits across the shoulders. You are not becoming colder. You are being expanded. Third, there are moments in the middle of ordinary days when you are struck by a wave of emotion that seems too large for the moment that triggered it. A song, a sunset, a stranger's face, and you do not know where it is coming from. It is coming from the part of you that already knows what is about to happen. And fourth, you have begun to notice that the same message keeps appearing in different places, different voices, different formats, different days, but the same message, this theme, this invitation. That is not coincidence, that is confirmation. You were not meant to move through this season the way the people around you move through theirs. You were not built for ordinary timelines. There is something in you that has been quietly protected and quietly preserved through every hard year, every disappointment, every door that closed before you could get through it. Because you were not meant to go through those doors. You were meant for this one, the one that opens on July 25th. Heaven did not say soon. Heaven said now. Before I take you deeper into what this season truly means for your life, I want to pause for just a moment and share something with you, because what I am about to describe is not only a spiritual reality, but something that science has been quietly confirming for years. Researchers who study human brain activity have discovered that certain people carry a stronger baseline frequency in their neural patterns. They call it gamma. Gamma brainwave activity is associated with peak clarity, heightened intuition, rapid insight, and what many describe as moments of sudden knowing, the kind where the answer arrives not through effort, but through a kind of opening. What these researchers have found is that chosen ones, people who carry a sense of deep purpose that they cannot always explain, tend to show stronger gamma signatures than average. But here is what they also found. Long seasons of hardship, isolation, and unresolved waiting suppress that frequency over time. The very gift you carry gets quieter under the weight of years that have asked too much of you. Neuroscientist named Dr. James Rivers, who has spent over 30 years in research connected with MIT, developed something to address exactly this. It is called the genius wave, and it takes only 7 minutes. 7 minutes of a specifically engineered audio frequency that helps your brain return to the state it was always meant to operate in. If something stirs in you when I describe it, the link is already waiting for you in the pinned comment below. We will come back to this in much greater detail very soon. But I did not want to carry you through everything that is about to unfold without first giving you that anchor. Now let me take you back into the heart of what this moment means. Because what I told you about gamma waves and what I am about to tell you about this season are not separate things. They are the same truth arriving from two different directions. You have been in a season that has required you to carry more than most people carry, and to do it with less support than most people would need. And somewhere along the way, something happened that is almost universal among people who walk this kind of road. You started to wonder if the wait was the point, if the suffering was the message, if something about you, specifically, had disqualified you from the ease that other people seem to move through their lives with. I want to speak to that directly and clearly. The wait was never the destination. It was the preparation. And there is a profound difference between those two things. When a musician is being prepared to perform in a great hall, they do not rehearse on the main stage. They rehearse in a smaller room, alone, with no audience, running the same passage again and again until it lives in their hands without thought. The smallness of the rehearsal room is not a comment on the size of the calling. It is simply where the work gets done before the doors open. You have been in the rehearsal room. July 25th is when the doors open. What I want you to do right now, before we go any further, are 3 things. They are simple, and they will take less than 10 minutes. First, bring to mind one thing you are grateful for that did not happen. Not something you received, but something you were spared. A relationship that would have cost you more than you knew. A path that would have taken you somewhere you were not meant to go. Hold that in your mind, and let the gratitude for the miss be as real as the gratitude for the gift. Second, say this quietly to yourself, out loud if you are able. My time is not running out. My time is arriving. Third, sit in silence for 7 minutes. No music, no scrolling, no input. Just you and the space around you. Let your mind settle without forcing it. If you have access to the genius wave, this is the moment to use it. If you do not yet, the silence itself is already working. If what you just experienced in those 3 steps stirred something in you, something quiet and real, I want to invite you to do something simple right now. Someone who needed this exact message is one share away from finding it. And if this landed in your heart, it is worth passing forward. Press like so. These words travel further than this moment. Leave a word in the comments below. Any word that marks that you were here and that you showed up for yourself today. Because the chosen ones who gather in the space are building something together in the silence between their words. Share this with one person who has been carrying something they have not told anyone about, because your willingness to pass it forward might be the most important thing that person receives this week. So subscribe so the next message finds you without you having to go looking for it. And if you feel moved to leave a blessing through the donation link in the pinned comment, know that you are not giving to a channel. You are passing light forward to the next person who arrives here desperate and leaves a little less alone. You do not owe anything. You are free to simply receive today. Now that you have sat in that silence, I want to give you the full picture of something I briefly introduced a moment ago, because what happens in the next section may be one of the most practically important things in this entire message. Something just happened in you. You may not have a name for it yet, but something shifted in those 7 minutes of quiet, and you are not the same person who pressed play on this message. Now, I want to show you exactly what that shift was, why it happened, and how to make it the new baseline of your life rather than a single unrepeatable moment. Earlier in this message, I briefly mentioned something. Now I want to give you the full picture. There is a frequency that chosen ones carry. It is not a metaphor. It is not spiritual language dressed up to sound scientific. It is a measurable, documentable reality that researchers have been studying for decades, and what they have found lines up almost perfectly with what people who walk the road you have been walking describe when they try to explain what it feels like to be them. The frequency is called gamma, and before you dismiss that word as too technical or too distant from what you are actually living, I want you to stay with me for a moment. Because what I am about to explain is going to reframe something you may have been misreading about yourself for years. Gamma brainwave activity operates at a frequency above 40 Hz. In practical terms, what that means is this. When your brain is producing strong gamma waves, you experience heightened clarity, accelerated intuition, rapid pattern recognition, and a quality of insight that does not feel like thinking so much as it feels like receiving. Athletes describe it as being in the zone. Artists describe it as the moment the work starts making itself. Spiritual people across every tradition describe it as the moment heaven and the human mind become briefly, beautifully synchronized. Scientists call it peak cognitive performance. But what they all agree on is this: it does not happen through force. It happens through alignment. Here is what the research has found about people who carry a calling they cannot fully explain. People who have a persistent sense that they were made for something specific even when the evidence around them seems to contradict that. People exactly like you. These people show measurably stronger gamma signatures than average. Their brains are wired differently, not better in every dimension, not free from pain or confusion or doubt, but differently, in a way that predisposes them toward depth, toward meaning, toward a kind of knowing that operates beneath the surface of ordinary reasoning. You were not imagining it when you felt that you processed the world differently from the people around you. You were not being dramatic. You were reading something real. But here is the part that matters most for where you are right now. Long seasons of isolation, unacknowledged pain, chronic waiting, and the particular exhaustion that comes from carrying a purpose that has not yet had an outlet. These things suppress gamma activity over time. The frequency does not disappear. It does not get destroyed, but it gets quieter. It gets buried under layers of stress hormones and neural fatigue and the accumulated weight of years that asked more of you than they gave back. And when that happens, the very thing that makes you who you are becomes harder for you to access. You are still a chosen one, but you feel like someone who used to know something they can no longer quite remember. This is exactly what Dr. James Rivers set out to address. Dr. Rivers has spent over 30 years in neuroscience research connected with MIT. His work has also drawn on findings from NASA, specifically from studies examining how certain audio frequencies affect cognitive performance and psychological resilience in high-pressure environments. What he discovered over the course of that research is something deceptively simple. The brain is not a fixed instrument. It is a responsive one. And one of the most reliable ways to shift its activity is through precisely engineered sound. The brain has a documented tendency called entrainment. When it is exposed to a consistent external frequency, it will begin to synchronize with that frequency over time. This is not a fringe finding. It appears in peer-reviewed research across multiple disciplines. What Dr. Rivers did was take that principle and apply it with surgical precision. He developed a specific audio protocol, now called the genius wave, that is designed to guide the brain back into the theta and gamma states that correspond to the qualities chosen ones are meant to operate in. Theta waves, which operate between 4 and 8 Hz, are associated with deep creativity, accelerated learning, and the kind of intuitive receptivity that allows insight to arrive without being forced. Gamma, as I described, is the frequency of peak clarity and synchronized knowing. The genius wave is engineered to move the brain gently through both, and it only takes 7 minutes. You may remember that in part 1, I asked you to sit in 7 minutes of silence. That was intentional, because 7 minutes is not an arbitrary number. Dr. Rivers found through his research that 7 minutes is the optimal one for the brain to complete one full cycle of frequency entrainment, without triggering the kind of neural resistance that longer sessions can produce. 7 minutes is long enough to shift the baseline. It is short enough that the brain does not fight it, which means that what you experienced in those 7 minutes of quiet a moment ago, whatever that quiet or stirring was, that was your brain beginning to remember a frequency it has always known but had lost access to under the weight of your waiting season. Now imagine what happens when that 7 minutes is not just silence, but specifically engineered audio designed to accelerate and deepen that return. That is the genius wave. That is what Dr. Rivers built. I want to share something with you that was shared with me. A woman named Teresa had been carrying the particular exhaustion you are probably familiar with. 3 years of applying for opportunities that went to other people. 3 years of watching doors open for everyone around her, while hers stayed shut. She had started to believe, the way quiet people believe things they never say out loud, that something about her was simply not enough. A friend sent her the link to the genius wave without much explanation. She used it for 11 days before she noticed something. The noticing was not dramatic, it was subtle. She described it as the feeling of remembering her own name after a long time of being called something else. Within 3 weeks, she had received 2 responses to applications she had sent months earlier and forgotten about, been offered a role she had not applied for, and, in her own words, stopped flinching every time her phone rang. The change was not in her circumstances. First, it was in her frequency, and then her circumstances followed. I know what some of you are thinking right now. $39 is not nothing, especially not when you have been in a season where every dollar has had to be accounted for, and nothing has felt like it had room to be spent on yourself. I want to acknowledge that directly. That feeling is valid. And I want to say something else alongside it. You have already spent years of your life in the waiting. You have already paid a cost that money cannot measure. The question is not whether you can afford 7 minutes a day. The question is whether you are ready to let the frequency you were born with come back online. The Genius Wave normally costs $49. Through the link in the pinned comment below, it is available today for $39. It comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee, which means you have 3 full months to experience it before you make any final decision about whether it belongs in your life. If it does not shift something in you, you get every dollar back. No argument, no process, just a return. One thing I need to say clearly. There are imitation products circulating that use similar language and similar names. Do not buy from any source other than the single link in the pinned comment below. That is the only verified access point for the authentic protocol developed by Dr. Rivers. Any other version is not what we are describing here, and I cannot speak to what those versions contain or what they do. This offer is not permanent. The pricing available through that link reflects a specific window, and that window is connected to this season, this message, this moment. The people who move on this today are the people who have learned, through everything their waiting seasons has taught them, that when a door opens with your name on it, you do not wait to see if it will still be there tomorrow. You have already waited long enough. The 7 minutes are ready when you are. The link is already in the pinned comment. And if something in your chest said yes when I described what Teresa experienced, that yes is worth listening to. What I want to do now is move into something that I believe will feel like the moment someone finally turns on the light in a room you have been sitting in for a very long time. Because the shift that is coming in your life is not random, and it is not a reward for how hard you have worked or how much you have suffered. It is a recognition, and before I can show you what you are being recognized for, I need to first name what this season has actually been doing in you, beneath the surface, in the places where the real work happens. Because what has been happening while you waited is not nothing. It is everything. You have been sitting in a room that no one else seemed to be able to see. Not a physical room. A room made of a particular kind of silence. A particular quality of aloneness that is different from loneliness, though it has worn loneliness as a coat for a long time now. And in that room, you have been experiencing things that you have not had language for, things that you have either kept entirely to yourself or tried to explain to someone who nodded and changed the subject. I want to give you that language now, because being named, being truly and accurately named, is one of the most powerful things that can happen to a human soul. There are 4 signs that appear consistently and almost universally in the lives of people who are in the specific season you are in right now. Not the season of punishment, not the season of being forgotten, the season of being positioned. And when I describe these 4 signs, I want you to notice not just whether you recognize them, but how deeply you recognize them, because the depth of that recognition is itself a signal. The first sign is a sudden wave of grief about the past that arrives without warning and without an obvious trigger. You are in the middle of an ordinary moment, washing dishes, sitting in traffic, lying in bed in the dark, and something rises in you that feels like mourning. Not for a specific loss, or not only for a specific loss, but for time, for the years, for the version of yourself that waited and waited and gave and did not always receive what the giving deserved. That grief is real. I am not going to tell you to reframe it or release it before you have fully felt it. But I want you to understand what it is. It is not depression. It is not despair. It is the sound of a season closing. Grief of that particular quality, the grief that comes without a clear object, is almost always the emotional signature of a threshold. You do not grieve a room you are still living in. You grieve it when you are about to leave. The second sign is that familiar places and familiar people have begun to feel different. Not bad, not always, but different, heavier sometimes, or simply smaller, in a way that has nothing to do with your love for them, and everything to do with the fact that you have grown in directions that the familiar has not been able to follow. You walk into a space that used to feel like home, and something in you stands slightly apart from it now. You sit across from someone you have known for years and notice a distance that neither of you created and neither of you can quite explain. This is not a sign that you are becoming cold or ungrateful or disconnected. It is a sign that you are being expanded beyond the container you have been living in. The container is not broken. You have simply outgrown it, and the next one is already being prepared. The third sign is a recurring image or dream involving a door. It does not always look the same. Sometimes it is a literal door in a specific place. Sometimes it is a passageway, a gate, an entrance that is present in the dream, but that you have not yet walked through. Sometimes the dream is not visual at all, but carries the emotional texture of standing at a threshold, of something being just on the other side of where you currently are. This image is not your imagination generating random content. It is your spirit communicating in the language it has always spoken, the language of symbol and threshold and arrival. The door in your dream is not locked, it is waiting. There is a difference between those two things that matters enormously. The fourth sign is that the same message keeps finding you through different channels. A conversation you overhear, a passage in something you are reading, a song that comes on at a moment when the words land differently than they ever have before. And now this, the repetition is not coincidence. When heaven wants to make sure you do not miss something, it does not say it once and move on. It says it again and again through every available voice until the person it is meant for finally lifts their head and receives it. You have been lifting your head. That is why you are here. Now I want to speak to something more specific, because named signs are one thing, but the texture of what you have actually been living is another. You may have experienced nights where sleep would not come, not because your mind was racing exactly, but because something in you was too alert, too aware, too close to something it could not yet see clearly enough to rest. You may have felt wronged, not dramatically, not in ways that make good stories, but in the quiet, accumulating way of someone who kept showing up fully and kept receiving less than that fullness deserved. You may have felt misunderstood in rooms where you gave your best, as though the truest thing about you was the thing no one in the room could quite perceive. That feeling is not paranoia. It is the accurate perception of someone who is carrying a frequency that the people around them have not yet been calibrated to receive. And here is what I most want you to hear in this moment. Being overlooked and being positioned are not the same experience, even though from the inside, they can feel almost identical. When you are overlooked, you are missed. When you are positioned, you are placed. One is an absence, the other is an assignment. What you have been interpreting as the world failing to see you may in fact be something far more deliberate and far more protective than that. The eyes that were not meant to recognize you in this season were not supposed to, because premature recognition would have taken you into rooms you were not yet ready to inhabit, with people who would have consumed what you were still in the process of becoming, at a pace that would have cost you the very thing that makes July 25th possible. You were not overlooked. You were held back from the wrong rooms, so you would be fully present for the right one. There are chosen ones all across this world, arriving at exactly this recognition, at exactly this moment. And what is happening between your heart and these words right now is part of something far larger than one person watching one video on one Monday morning. If this has named something real in you, I want to invite you gently to press like on this message, not for the channel, but so the next person who is sitting in that same invisible room gets the chance to be named too. Leave a word in the comments below, any word at all, just enough to mark that you were here, that you showed up for yourself today, that you did not let this pass. Share this with someone who has been trying to find stillness in a season that has been anything but still, because your willingness to pass this forward may be the most quietly powerful thing you do today. And if you feel led to leave a blessing through the donation link in the pinned comment, know that you are not funding a channel. You are lighting a path for the next chosen one who arrives here in the dark. Subscribe not as a platform gesture, but as a choice to remain part of this community of people who are waking up together, one named sign at a time. If what I have just described has landed in the place where you have been keeping these things quietly, if you have recognized yourself in these 4 signs, and in the specific texture of what this season has felt like from the inside, I want you to type the words "I see it" in the comments below, not as a performance, as a declaration. As the first time you say out loud, even in 2 small words, that you see what has been happening and you are ready to understand it more fully. What I want to move into now is something that may be the most honest part of this entire message, because before I can show you where you are going, I need to sit with you for a moment in the full weight of what the road here has actually cost you. Not to reopen wounds, but to honor them, because what was taken from you in this season deserves to be acknowledged before it is redeemed. Let me stay with you here for a moment before we move anywhere else. What you just recognized in those 4 signs, the grief, the growing distance from familiar places, the door in your dreams, the repeated message finding you again and again, that recognition deserves more than a quick pivot toward hope. It deserves honesty, and honesty, real honesty, the kind that does not rush toward comfort before it has fully named the pain, is what I want to offer you right now. Because I have learned from walking alongside people who carry what you carry, the hardest part of a long waiting season is not the waiting itself. The hardest part is the inventory, the quiet, private, never fully spoken accounting of everything the years have taken. And I think you have been doing that accounting alone for long enough. So let me do it with you. Think about the relationships that could have been built during these years, but were not. Not because you were incapable of connection, but because the season you were in required a kind of interior focus that left less available for the surface-level exchanges that most friendships are sustained by. You watched people around you build easy, ordinary bonds, the kind that form over shared evenings and uncomplicated plans, and the simple pleasure of not carrying too much. And you were happy for them, mostly. But there was something underneath the happiness that you did not always let yourself look at directly. A longing for the kind of closeness that your season seemed to keep just out of reach. Not because you were unlovable, not because you were too much or too little, but because the depth you carry makes certain kinds of connection difficult, and the road you were on did not always leave room for the patience that real intimacy requires. There were friendships that drifted, connections that might have deepened if the circumstances had been different. People who showed up at the edge of your life during windows when you had very little to give, and who moved on before the window changed. You told yourself it was fine. You told yourself that people come and go, and that is simply how life works. But in the quiet hours, in the 3 a.m. hours, you let yourself feel what it actually cost, and it cost something real. I want to say that plainly. The relational cost of this season was real, and pretending otherwise does not honor what you carried. Think also about the career, the vocation, the sense of professional purpose that you watched others step into while you were still waiting for your own door to open. There were moments when you were genuinely brilliant in rooms that did not recognize it. Moments when you brought something rare and careful and considered to a situation and watched someone with less depth and less integrity receive the acknowledgement that your contribution deserved. You did not always say anything. Most of the time you went home and sat with it and talked yourself back into patience. But patience sustained over years has a weight to it that people who have not carried it rarely understand. You know that weight. You have been carrying it in your shoulders and your chest, and the specific exhaustion behind your eyes that no amount of sleep has been able to fully resolve. There were opportunities that seemed to open and then closed before you could get through them. Projects that began and stalled. Doors that cracked and then went shut again, sometimes with an explanation and sometimes without one. And each time that happened, you found the strength to begin again, which is one of the under-acknowledged forms of courage that exists, but the beginning again cost something each time. A little more of the confidence that used to come easily. A little more of the willingness to let yourself want things loudly, visibly, without the protective layer of qualification and self-management that you have learned to keep between your desires and the world. At some point, probably gradually, and without a clear moment you could point to, you stopped telling people your biggest dreams. Not because the dream stopped, but because you had learned, through enough specific and painful experiences, that speaking a dream out loud into the wrong air does something to it. That certain people, not out of malice but out of the limitation of their own vision, will look at what you carry and hand it back to you slightly smaller than you gave it, and you decided quietly that it was safer to keep the largest things inside, that the dream was worth more protected and private than spoken and diminished. I understand that decision, and I also want to tell you that the season of protecting it in silence is coming to an end. July 25th is not a day for small, guarded words. It is a day for the full thing, finally spoken into air that is finally ready to receive it. And then there is the one that is hardest to say. The faith in yourself, not faith in God, necessarily, though that has had its own complicated seasons. But the specific, quiet faith in the validity of your own perception. The trust that what you sense is real, that what you carry is worth something. That the thing in you that has always known it was meant for more than this, was not simply a story you told yourself to survive. That faith has been tested in ways that leave marks. Not the dramatic, visible marks of obvious trauma, but the subtle ones. The ones that show up as a slight hesitation before you speak your opinion in a room. A tendency to over-explain yourself, to preemptively justify your choices, to brace slightly before receiving feedback as though the body has learned to prepare for impact. The years did that. The specific combination of being overlooked and misunderstood and asked to be patient just a little longer again and again did that. And I am not going to tell you to simply decide to stop doing it. I am going to tell you that what heals that particular mark is not willpower. It is encounter. It is the experience of being fully seen and accurately named. and then of watching what happens when the God who ordained your story finally begins to move the pieces into place. There is a woman in the ancient record whose story I need to bring to you here, because she lived something that I believe you will recognize from the inside out. Her name was Hannah, and what the scripture records about her in 1 Samuel chapter 1 is a portrait of a specific kind of suffering that has no clean category and no easy consolation. Hannah was a woman who wanted one thing, one specific, deeply human thing, and she did not receive it. Year after year, in a culture where her particular lack was not of a private sorrow but a public one, visible and commented upon and misread by the people around her, she carried what she carried. She had a husband who loved her and tried to compensate for the ache with tenderness, and his tenderness, though genuine, could not reach the place that was actually hurting. He asked her in 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 8, why she wept and would not eat, why her heart was grieved. He meant well, but the question itself reveals the distance between what he could see and what she was actually living. Some pain is so specific that even love cannot fully translate it. She went to the temple, and there, in 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 10, scripture says she was in bitterness of soul, and she wept and prayed to God. She did not compose herself first. She did not wait until she could approach with dignity and measured language. She arrived in the full weight of what she was carrying, and she poured it out. And what happened next is one of the most painful moments in her story, not its resolution. The priest Eli watched her lips moving without sound and concluded that she was drunk. He misread her deepest prayer as disorder. He named her wrongly in the moment of her most honest seeking. I want to stay in that moment with you, not in the miracle that came after, not in the answer that arrived in its time, just here. In this moment where Hannah is at the altar, pouring out what she can no longer carry alone, and the person who was supposed to see her clearly sees her wrong. You know this moment, not perhaps at an altar, but you know what it is to show up with the truest thing you have and be misread. To offer your most honest self into a situation and have it categorized incorrectly by someone who was looking at the surface and calling it the whole. You know what it is to be Eli'd, to be named wrong by someone who had the authority in the room and used it without the perception to match it. Hannah did not defend herself loudly. She did not collapse under the misreading either. She simply told the truth about what she was doing, and she held what she was holding, and she kept her face toward the altar, even when the altar offered her nothing visible in that moment, but the chance to keep praying into the silence. That is where you have been. Face toward the altar, praying into silence, holding something that has not yet been answered in the visible, not because it has been denied, but because its time, the specific and appointed and unalterable time that belongs to it, had not yet arrived. July 25th is arriving. And what Hannah held through every year of that particular unwitnessed faithfulness is about to speak to something in what you are holding to. There is a question, this I suspect in this somewhere, every you're sweatingness. It is not always spoken directly. It arrives in different forms at different times. Sometimes it sounds like, why is it taking so long? Sometimes it sounds like, what am I doing wrong? Sometimes, in the very honest hours, it sounds like, is it still coming at all? And underneath all of those versions, the real question is this: what is actually happening with time right now? And is the time I have spent waiting counting for anything? I want to give you an answer to that question. Not a motivational answer, not a reframe designed to make you feel better in the moment and leave you unchanged underneath. A real answer. One that comes from both ancient understanding and something that human language has been quietly reaching toward for thousands of years. The ancient Greeks, who thought about almost everything with a precision that most of us have lost access to, had two entirely separate words for time. Most of us in the modern world operate with a single word, a single concept, a single experience of time as a line, moving in one direction at a consistent pace. But the Greeks understood that there are actually two completely different things that the word time is trying to describe, and collapsing them into one word costs us something important. The first word was chronos. Chronos is the time you already know. It is the time on the clock and the date on the calendar and the number of years that have passed since you began waiting for something that has not yet arrived. Chronos moves at a fixed pace. It does not accelerate or slow down based on what is happening in your life. It does not care whether the year was fruitful or devastating. It simply continues. And when you measure your waiting in Chronos, you will almost always arrive at a conclusion that feels like loss, because Chronos has no mechanism for accounting for what is being built beneath the surface of visible progress. In Chronos, a year without visible change looks exactly like a wasted year. In Chronos, 5 years of invisible preparation looks like 5 years of nothing happening. The second word was kairos, and kairos is something entirely different. Kairos is not a quantity of time. It is a quality of time. It is the right moment, the timely arrival, the specific intersection of readiness and opportunity that cannot be manufactured and cannot be forced, and cannot be moved to an earlier slot on the calendar simply because you are ready to be done waiting. Kairos does not operate on a clock. It operates on a kind of divine precision that looks, from the outside and from the perspective of Chronos, like randomness. But from the inside, from the perspective of the person it happens to, it feels like the most inevitable thing that has ever occurred. Like something that could not have happened any earlier and could not have been delayed any longer. Like an arrival that was always going to be exactly here. What I want you to understand is that you have been evaluating your life in Chronos while your story has been unfolding in Kairos. You have been counting the days and finding the number too large, measuring the distance between where you are and where you thought you would be by now, and finding the gap too wide, assessing your progress by the standards of a measurement system that was never designed to capture what is actually happening in your life. And every time you have done that, you have arrived at a conclusion that is technically accurate in Chronos and completely wrong in Kairos. In Kairos, you are not behind. You are being assembled. Every year that looked like nothing in Chronos was a year in which something essential was being added to you, something that the arrival you are moving toward will require, and that could not have been placed in you any faster without breaking what it was being placed into. The waiting was not the pause between chapters. It was the chapter, the one that made all the others possible. Now I want to bring this alongside the second ancient concept, because these two ideas, Kairos and what I am about to describe, do not simply coexist. They explain each other. There is a thread that runs through the ancient Hebrew understanding of time that speaks of an appointed moment, not a hoped-for moment, not a probable moment, an appointed one. The Hebrew framework understood that certain things in a human life are not subject to the ordinary laws of cause and effect and visible progress. They are subject to an appointment, a specific, preordained intersection of the person and the moment that was set before either of them existed in the form they currently inhabit. And the most important characteristic of an appointed moment is this: it cannot be canceled by delay. It can only be arrived at. Think about what that means for you specifically. Every door that closed, every opportunity that seemed to open and then did not. Every year that passed without the visible movement you were praying for. None of those things canceled your appointment. They could not. An appointment is not a preference or a possibility or a probability. It is a fixed point, and fixed points do not disappear because the road to them was longer or more complicated than expected. They simply wait, with a patience that has no anxiety in it, because an appointment has no need to worry about whether it will be kept. It simply is. And the person it belongs to is always moving toward it, even in the seasons when every visible sign suggests they are standing still. Hannah understood this, though perhaps not in these exact words. What she carried to the temple in 1 Samuel was not just a prayer. It was a human soul arriving, finally, at the intersection of her deepest need and heaven's appointed response. The years before that moment were not wasted years. They were the years that shaped the Hannah who arrived at that altar. The specific quality of what she poured out that day, the depth of it, the honesty of it, the willingness to be utterly undone before God without performance or pretense. That quality was not something she had always possessed. It was something the years had produced in her. The appointed moment required a Hannah that only those specific years could have made. Your appointed moment requires a you that only these specific years could have made. July 25th is not a random Monday. It is a Kairos moment, wearing a calendar date. It is the place where your Chronos and your Kairos finally meet, where the years of invisible preparation intersect with the timely arrival that was always coming, that could not have come before now, that cannot be delayed past now. What God has ordained, delay cannot cancel. What is appointed does not wait on permission from circumstances or the approval of the people who did not see you correctly. During the years it was being prepared, it simply arrives, on time, in fullness, with everything that was promised still intact. I want to give you something to carry into the rest of this message and into the days ahead. When you feel the pull back toward Chronos, when the old habit of counting days and measuring gaps tries to reassert itself, I want you to have a word to anchor yourself with. The word is appointed, not soon, not eventually, not someday if everything works out. Appointed. Say it quietly to yourself in those moments. My moment is not delayed, it is appointed. My arrival is not uncertain, it is appointed. What is moving toward me on July 25th is not a possibility. It is an appointment that was made before I understood what I was waiting for. This is also what the Genius Wave is designed to support, not as a replacement for faith or prayer, or the kind of deep interior work you have already been doing, but as a companion to it. When Dr. James Rivers developed this 7-minute audio protocol through his decades of research connected with MIT, what he was essentially doing was creating a tool that helps the brain return to the frequency at which it can recognize a Kairos moment when it arrives. Because one of the things that long seasons of Chronos measured waiting does is dull the sensitivity of that recognition. The gamma frequency that chosen ones carry, the one that allows for the kind of intuitive knowing that catches an appointed moment as it comes, gets quieter under the accumulated weight of years. The Genius Wave is designed to bring it back online. If you have not yet visited the link in the pinned comment, this is a gentle reminder that it is there, not as a pressure, but as an open door that has your name on it. What is coming next in this message is something I have been building toward since the very first word, because now that you understand what the waiting has been and what the timing actually means, I want to show you what is already moving in your direction. 3 specific things, already in motion, already bearing your name, already closer than you have allowed yourself to believe. I need you to feel something before I tell you anything. Right now, in this moment, something is already moving. Not toward someone like you. Not toward people in your general situation. Toward you. Specifically, precisely, with the kind of intentionality that does not get lost in transit and does not arrive at the wrong address. What I am about to describe is not what might happen if conditions align. It is what is already in motion, already bearing your name, already closer to your front door than the doubt that has been sitting in your living room for the last several years. There are 3 things moving toward you right now, and I want to name them one at a time, because each one deserves to be received fully before the next one arrives. The first is a shift in your relational world, and I want to be honest with you about what this shift is going to feel like before it feels like a gift. Because if I only describe the beautiful part, I will not be preparing you accurately. Some people are going to leave your life in this season. Not dramatically, not with conflict or confrontation in most cases, but quietly. You will notice a natural loosening in certain connections, a tapering of contact that neither of you will fully explain to the other, because there will not be a clean reason to point to. What is happening is that your frequency is changing, and certain connections were calibrated to a version of you that the waiting season produced. And that version is completing its work. The departure of those connections is not a loss in the way it would have once felt like a loss. It is a clearing. It is the relational field of your life making space for what is actually compatible with where you are going. And into that cleared space, new people are already moving. People who will recognize you immediately, not after a long process of earning their understanding, but at the first real conversation, the first moment you speak honestly about what you carry and what you see. People who will not require you to make yourself smaller, to be comfortable in their presence. People who are arriving at the same Kairos threshold you are arriving at, from different roads, with different stories, but with the same essential frequency. You will know them when they appear because the knowing will not feel like a slow build. It will feel like a recognition, like meeting someone you have somehow always known. Pay attention to who appears in your world in the days immediately surrounding July 25th. The arrivals will not be accidental. The second thing moving towards you is clarity about your purpose. Not a vision statement, not a 5-year plan, a single clear next step. I want to say that again because it matters enormously. Not the whole map, one step. The question that has been circling in you, what am I actually supposed to be doing with my life question, that has worn many different outfits over the years, but has always been the same question underneath. That question is about to answer itself, not through a dramatic revelation, though for some of you it may feel close to that. For most of you it will arrive as a quiet certainty about one specific action, a conversation to initiate, a thing to create, a direction to begin moving in without waiting for the full picture to become visible first. The temptation in this moment will be to wait for more clarity before acting on the clarity you have. Do not do that. The step that is becoming clear to you is not the beginning of a journey you need to fully understand before you take it. It is simply the next step, and the step after that will become visible only once you have taken this one. Purpose in the Kairos season does not reveal itself all at once. It reveals itself in motion. Take the step that is already becoming clear, even if it is small, even if it seems disproportionately modest, relative to the size of what you sense you are moving toward. The size of the step is not the measure of the significance of the movement. The third thing moving towards you is resources and opportunities that you did not have to fight for. And I want to draw a distinction here that I think will matter to you, because you have spent a significant portion of this waiting season fighting, advocating for yourself in rooms that were not ready to hear you, pushing against resistance that seemed to have no logic to it, working twice as hard for half the acknowledgement that others received with a fraction of your effort. That season of fighting is ending. What is coming is not the result of a final push. It is the result of positioning. The doors that are about to open are not doors you are going to force. They are doors that are going to open because you are now standing in the right place at the right time, which is to say you are standing at your Kairos intersection, and doors that belong to a Kairos moment do not need to be pushed. They swing. This does not mean passivity. It means a different quality of action. Less striving, more receiving, less proving, more being. The resource, the opportunity, the open door that carries peace in it rather than pressure, these are the markers of what is coming. If an opportunity arrives in this season and it feels like you are going to have to fight to keep it, look more carefully at whether it is the door that belongs to you. The one that belongs to you will feel like coming home. It will feel like something clicking into alignment, rather than something you are forcing into a shape it was not meant to hold. Here is what I most want you to guard against in this season. Do not talk yourself out of what is coming before it arrives. The mind that has been trained by years of disappointment has developed a protective reflex, a tendency to preemptively reduce expectations so that the landing, if it comes, hurts less. I understand why that reflex exists. It was useful once, but it is going to work against you in this specific window if you let it, because what is coming toward you on and after July 25th is going to require you to receive it at full size, to not immediately look for the catch, to not immediately begin managing your own hope, to simply open your hands and let it land. You are allowed to believe that something this good is actually coming for you, not for someone more deserving, not for someone who has done it better or suffered more cleanly or prayed with more consistency. For you, exactly as you are, exactly where you are standing, on exactly this Monday, chosen ones do not only receive what they have been given, they carry it forward and multiply it. And every person who arrives at this message becomes part of something that no single waiting season could have contained on its own. If these three movements have landed in you today, I want to invite you to press like on this message as an act of choosing to be part of what is being built here, not as a favor to anyone, but as a declaration that you were present for this moment and you chose to say yes to it. Drop a word in the comments so that other chosen ones watching know they are not sitting in this alone. Share this with someone who is still in the thick of their waiting and needs to know that the ground beneath them is already shifting. Stay at this table by subscribing, because what comes next in the series belongs to you too. And if you feel led, sow into the donation link in the pinned comment, knowing that you are extending this ground for the next chosen one who is still finding their way here. Type the words "I'm ready" in the comments if what I just described has named something that is already moving in you, not as a wish, as a recognition, as the moment you stop waiting to feel ready and simply declare that you already are. What I want to do now is give you a name. Not the name you were given at birth and not the name this season has sometimes called you in your lowest moments. A true name. The name of what you are becoming on the other side of everything you have been through. Because you are not simply a person who survived a long waiting season. You are something specific, and it is time you knew what that is. Something settled in you when you read those three movements. I could feel it in the way this moment sits, quieter than the parts before it, as though the rushing current of everything that has been described has finally found a wider channel and slowed into something you can actually stand in without being swept. That settling is not the end of the message. It is the beginning of a different kind of receiving. Because what I want to give you now is not more information. It is a name. And a name, when it is the right one, does something that information alone cannot do. It gives you somewhere to stand. You have been called many things during this season. Some of those names were given to you by people who saw you from the outside and made their conclusions from what was visible. Some of them were names you gave yourself in the hard hours, the 3 a.m. hours, the hours when the gap between where you are and where you believed you were supposed to be felt widest. Some of those names were gentle and some were not. Some you carried for years before you realized they were never yours to carry in the first place. I want to give back to you a name that has always been yours. One that was written into the design of your life before the waiting began, before the disappointment accumulated, before the years took what they took and left you holding less than you started with, or so it seemed. This name does not describe who you were before the hard season. It describes who you have become because of it, and who you are now ready to be in the world that is opening in front of you. You are a hope restorer. Let me tell you what that means, because it is not a soft name, and it is not a decorative one. A hope restorer is not someone who simply feels hopeful. There are many people who feel hopeful. A hope restorer is someone who has traveled through the specific territory where hope goes to die and has come back carrying something that could not have been carried by someone who never made that journey. You cannot restore what you have not lost. You cannot speak to the place where hope has gone dark in another person if you have never sat in that darkness yourself and found that something in you refused to go out completely. That is what these years have been making you into. Not a person who avoided the valley. A person who walked through it, slowly, in the dark, without a map, and arrived at something on the other side that is now ready to be given away. The specific quality of what you carry, the ability to sit with someone in their worst moment without flinching, without rushing them toward resolution, without needing their pain to be tidier than it actually is. That quality does not come from reading about suffering. It comes from having been inside it long enough to know its geography. A hope restorer does not arrive in another person's life with answers. They arrive with presence, with the particular kind of presence that says, I have been where you are, and I know it is real, and I know it is survivable, and I know that what feels like the end of the story from inside it is not the end of the story. That is not something you can perform. It is something you have to have lived into, and you have lived into it. Every year of this waiting season has been adding something to the quality of that presence. Every moment of sitting with your own unanswered questions without abandoning yourself has been deepening the capacity you now carry to sit with someone else in theirs. The world does not have enough hope restorers. It has plenty of people who can speak about hope from a distance, from the comfortable side of having received what they prayed for, from the bright side of the answered prayer, looking back at the dark side of the waiting. Those voices have their place, but they cannot reach the person who is in the middle of it, the person who is in the Hannah moment, the person who is at the altar in the bitterness of their soul, because the distance between that person and a voice speaking from comfort is too great. What reaches that person is the voice of someone who knows the specific temperature of where they are. Someone who does not speak about the darkness academically, but who carries the memory of it in their body, in the way they choose their words. in the patience with which they hold space for what has no quick resolution. That is you. That is what you are. That is what these years have been assembling. And here is what being a hope restorer means for what is coming next in your life. The relationships that are arriving, the ones I described in part 6, the ones who will recognize you immediately at the first real conversation, they are not arriving randomly. They are arriving because they need what you carry. They are arriving in your Kairos moment because their Kairos moment requires the specific thing that your specific road has produced in you. The new people entering your life are not entering it because you finally became impressive enough to deserve better connections. They are entering it because the person you have become through the waiting is now exactly what the next chapter of your life and theirs requires. And the purpose clarity that is coming, the single clear next step that is about to become visible, it will almost certainly be connected to this identity. The action that is becoming clear to you will be one that involves, in some form, the restoration of hope in someone else. It may look like a conversation. It may look like something you create. It may look like a role you step into, or a community you begin to build, or a single person you reach out to who has been sitting in silence with something too heavy to carry alone. However the step appears, the essence of it will be this: you moving towards someone else's darkness with the specific light that only your journey has produced. This is why July 25th is not just a personal turning point. It is a commissioning. You are not simply being released from the waiting season so that you can finally receive what was withheld. You are being released so that everything the waiting season deposited in, you can begin to move outward. The restoration that is coming into your own life is the beginning of a restoration that you will carry into the lives of others. What God is doing in you on this Monday is not only for you, though it is absolutely and completely for you. It is also seed. It is the first of many moments in which what was poured into you during the silent years becomes something that can be poured out into the world that needs it. I want to speak some blessings over you now, not as a formula and not as performance, but as the most honest words I have for what I see when I look at where you are standing and where you are going. May the hope you have been quietly guarding through every hard year now rise in you without apology and without the protective layer of qualification you have learned to keep around it. May you speak your dreams out loud into air that is finally ready to receive them, and find that the speaking itself gens to build what you have been holding in silence. May the people who are moving toward you arrive quickly and be recognized clearly, and may the recognition between you be so immediate, so mutual, so that neither of you needs to earn the other's understanding. May you simply teach each other from the first honest word. May the step that is becoming clear to you be taken without waiting for the full map, and may each step after that one light up as you move, so that you are never more than one step without direction, but also never burdened with more of the picture than you need for the step you are currently on. May the hope you restore in others be multiplied back to you in ways you did not ask for and did not plan, so that the giving and the receiving become so intertwined in your life that you can no longer tell where one ends and the other begins. And may this Monday, July 25th, be the day that you mark in your memory as the moment you stopped waiting to be told that you were ready and simply stepped forward into the truth that you already were. You are a hope restorer. You have always been. And the world that is waiting for what you carry has been waiting long enough. The name has landed. I can feel it in the way this moment holds itself, different from the parts that came before it, as though something that was previously abstract has become solid and real, and something you can actually put your weight on. You are a hope restorer, and now I want to show you what that identity looks like in the practical, lived, day-to-day reality of a life that is turning. Because a name without a map for how to inhabit it is just a beautiful word. And you have had enough. Beautiful words that did not tell you what to do next. So let me tell you what to do next. There are 3 areas of your life that are about to undergo a transformation that is going to surprise you. Not because the changes will necessarily be loud or dramatic, though some of them may be, but because of how natural they will feel when they arrive. After a season of everything feeling like it required enormous effort for minimal return, the changes that are coming are going to feel like exhaling, like something that was always meant to be this way, finally settling into the shape it was designed for. Let me walk you through each one. The first area is relationships. And I want to begin here because relationships are where most of the pain of your waiting season has lived. And they are where much of the joy of your arrival season is going to be felt first. Here is what is happening in your relational world right now, and what is about to happen in a way that you will be able to see clearly. The people who were part of your life during the waiting season fall into 2 broad categories. There are those who carried something genuine for you, who showed up imperfectly but honestly, who did not always know what you needed, but who stayed and who tried. Those people are not going anywhere. In fact, the quality of those connections is about to deepen in ways that the pressure and heaviness of the waiting season made difficult. When the weight lifts, and it is lifting, the love that was always underneath it becomes more visible and more accessible. You are going to find yourself able to receive from those people in ways you have not been able to for a long time, because receiving requires a kind of openness that exhaustion closes off, and the exhaustion is ending. And then there are the connections that were held in place by the season itself. Connections built on shared struggle, on proximity, on the particular bond that forms between people who are enduring the same difficult conditions. Those connections are going to loosen, not because they were not real, but because the conditions that sustained them are changing. Some of those people will grow with you into the new season. Some will not. And the ones who do not, the ones whose connection to you was more about the difficulty than about you, their departure will feel less like loss and more like the natural completion of something that was always meant to be temporary. Into the space that is clearing, new people are already arriving. And here is the specific thing I want you to watch for. The new people who are coming into your life in this season are going to be recognizable by one particular quality. They are going to see you quickly, not after a long audition, not after you have proven yourself through a series of tests and demonstrations. They are going to look at you, hear you speak honestly about something that matters to you, and simply know. And you are going to know that they know. That mutual immediate recognition is the signature of a kairos connection, a relationship that has been appointed rather than accumulated. Pay close attention to who appears in your world in the coming days and weeks. The arrivals are not random. They are relational appointments, and they are carrying pieces of the next chapter of your life in their hands. The second area is purpose, and specifically, the relationship between you and the question that has followed you through this entire waiting season, the question of what you are actually supposed to be doing with your life, and whether the thing you sense inside yourself is real and worth following. I want to speak directly to the anxiety that question has carried, because for many of you, that question has not been a neutral inquiry. It has been a source of shame, a place where the gap between What you feel called to and what you are currently living has seemed like evidence of failure, rather than evidence of a calling that has not yet found its full expression. That anxiety is about to change character. Not disappear, but change. The question is going to shift from "what should I do?", which is a question that can spiral indefinitely without resolution, to "what is the one next thing?", which is a question that always has a specific answer if you are willing to sit with it honestly. And the answer to that question, the one next thing, is going to arrive with a quality of clarity that you have not felt in a long time. It will not feel like a grand vision. It will feel like a simple, specific, undeniable nudge toward one action. A message to send, a thing to begin, a room to walk into, a conversation to initiate, a gift to offer that you've been holding back because you were not sure it was ready or you were not sure you were ready. Take that step. Whatever it is, when it becomes clear, take it without waiting for the full picture. The hope restorer in you does not need the complete map before moving. You need the first step and the willingness to trust that the next one will appear when your foot is already in motion. Purpose in this season is not going to be revealed through planning. It is going to be revealed through movement. Begin moving in the direction of the thing that is already becoming clear, and watch what organizes itself around that movement. Here is something practical to do right now, today, before this Monday is over. Find 15 minutes of quiet, not to plan and not to pray in the traditional sense, but simply to ask one question and then listen. The question is this: what is the one thing I already know I am supposed to do that I have been postponing because I was waiting to feel more ready? Sit with that question. Let the answer surface without immediately qualifying it, or managing it, or deciding whether it is realistic. Just let it come. Write it down. And then, before you sleep tonight, do the first smallest possible version of it. Not the whole thing. Just the first motion. That first motion is the Kairos step. It is the step that July 25th was built around. The third area is resources and opportunities. And this is the one that I want to approach with the most care, because it is also the one where the waiting season has done the most damage to your ability to expect good things without immediately bracing for the disappointment. You have been in a season of fighting for what should have been given, of proving your worth in rooms that should have recognized it without requiring the proof, of working at full capacity for returns that did not reflect the quality of what you were bringing. That season is over. What is coming is not more of the same with a slightly better outcome. What is coming is a different quality of experience entirely. Resources that arrive without the usual toll. Opportunities that come with peace in them rather than pressure. Open doors that feel like invitations rather than tests. The distinguishing mark of what belongs to this new season is that it will feel like it fits. Not like something you had to force or argue for, or justify your right to receive. Like something that was made with your name already on it. This does not mean that what is coming requires no effort from you. It means the effort will feel purposeful rather than desperate. There is an enormous difference between working towards something because you are afraid that if you stop, nothing will come, and working towards something because you can already feel its reality, and your effort is simply how you meet it halfway. The second quality of effort is what this season is introducing you to. You are moving from striving to receiving, from pushing to being met, from fighting for your due to simply being in the right place at the right time, which is where a Kairos appointment always puts you. Watch your finances in the weeks surrounding July 25th. Watch your inbox. Watch your conversations. Watch the seemingly small moments where someone mentions something offhandedly that turns out to be exactly the connection or the opening you needed. The resources of this season are not always going to arrive through the channels you have been watching. They are going to arrive through channels that open specifically because you are standing in a new place. Stay alert, stay open, and when something arrives that carries that quality of fitting, of feeling like coming home rather than winning a battle, receive it fully. Do not look for the catch. Do not immediately begin assessing what it will cost you. Simply open your hands and let it land. You have spent long enough with your hands braced for impact. July 25th is the day you open them for something else entirely. Everything that has been spoken in this message has been moving toward this moment, not toward a conclusion. Exactly, because what has been set in motion today does not conclude here. It begins here. But toward this specific quality of arrival, the moment where the weight of everything that has been carried can be set down, not because the journey is over, but because you have finally reached the place where the load you were never meant to carry permanently can be left behind, and you can walk forward carrying only what was always meant to travel with you. I want to thank you, and I do not mean that as a formality or a courtesy at the end of a long message. I mean it as something specific and earned. You showed up today. You pressed play and you stayed. You let these words land in the places where things actually live in you. Not just the surface places, but the deeper ones. The places where the real accounting happens, where the real waiting has been felt, where the real hope has been quietly guarded through every year that tried to convince you it was foolish to keep holding on. That took something. Not everyone who needed this message had what it took to stay through all of it. You did, and that is not a small thing. I want you to know something that I mean with complete sincerity. All across this world right now, in different phones, in different languages, and different versions of the same waiting room you have been sitting in, other chosen ones are walking into this exact same message. Some of them are hearing it for the first time in the dark of an early morning, before anyone else in their house is awake. Some of them are hearing it in a car, parked in a lot somewhere, unable to go inside yet, because something in them needed to finish this first. Some of them are hearing it through tears they did not expect to cry. And every single one of them is carrying something that rhymes with what you have been carrying. You are not the only one. You have never been the only one. The aloneness of this season was a condition, not a truth. And the truth is this: you are part of a company of chosen ones who have been in preparation simultaneously, in different places, through different roads, and who are arriving at their Kairos threshold in the same window of time. July 25th does not belong only to you. It belongs to all of you. And there is something extraordinary about knowing that your breakthrough and theirs are not in competition. They are in concert. I want to give you something to do right now, before this message ends, and before you step back into the ordinary movements of your day. It is not complicated. It does not require anything except your willingness to be honest with yourself for 2 or 3 minutes. I want you to imagine as specifically and as visibly as you can a threshold. It can look like anything: a doorway, the edge of a field, the top of a staircase, the bank of a river. Whatever image your mind reaches for naturally, let it be that. And I want you to imagine yourself standing at that threshold on the near side of it, looking across, and in your hands and on your back and in the pockets of everything you are wearing, you are holding the accumulated weight of this season, grief of the years, the fatigue of the fighting, the residue of the misreadings, the moments when you were named wrong by people who should have seen you more clearly, the specific ache of the dreams you stopped, speaking out loud, the quiet shame of the gap between where you are and where you thought you would be. The disappointment that is accumulated in layers so gradual, you almost stopped noticing it was there. Feel the weight of all of it. Let it be as real as it actually is for a moment. Do not minimize it or manage it. Just feel it. And now I want you to do one thing. Set it down at the threshold. Not throw it away. Not pretend it did not happen. Not deny that it was real or that it cost something. Simply set it down. Place it deliberately at the edge of where you have been. And leave it there. Because where you are going does not require it. Where you are going was designed for you without the weight. The hope restorer that you are does not need to carry the unresolved grief of the waiting season in order to sit with someone else in theirs. You can carry the memory of it, the wisdom of it, the compassion it produced, without carrying the heaviness of it. The heaviness belongs at the threshold. Leave it there, and then step across. What you carry across is everything the waiting season deposited in you that was always meant to travel forward. The depth, the patience, the specific quality of presence that comes from having been in the dark long enough to know how to sit with someone else in theirs without flinching. The hope that survived every attempt the years made to extinguish it, which means it is the kind of hope that has been tested and held, and is therefore trustworthy in a way that untested hope simply cannot be. The knowing, the frequency, the gamma signature of a chosen one who has been through the fire and come out not destroyed but refined. That is what crosses the threshold with you. That is what July 25th receives. If something real was built in the space between this voice and your heart today, and I believe something was, I want to gently acknowledge it. What happened here belonged to both of us. You brought your willingness and your honesty and your decision to stay through all of it. I brought what I was given to bring. And what was built between those two things is yours now. It goes with you across that threshold. No one can take it back. If this message has meant something to you, pressing like is simply a way of saying so without needing words. It is a quiet nod between one chosen one and the voice they showed up to hear today. And if you leave something in the comments below, even a single word, you are doing something more significant than you might realize. You are making sure that the next chosen one who finds this message does not arrive to silence. They arrive to a room already full of people who showed up before them and left a mark that said, I was here and it was real, and you are not alone in this. Share this with one person today, not because the channel needs the reach, but because there is someone in your life who is still sitting in the waiting room, still in the Hannah moment at the altar, still holding something they have not been able to name. And your willingness to pass this forward might be the most quietly loving thing you do for them this week. Choose to stay in this community by subscribing, not as a platform gesture, but as the decision of a hope restorer to remain connected to others who are waking up alongside them. And if you feel moved, if something in you wants to pass something forward for the next person who arrives here in the dark, the donation link is in the pinned comment below. No pressure, no expectation. Only the open hand of someone who received something today and wants to make sure the next person can too. If the genius wave met you somewhere in the middle of this message and you know it is a yes, it is waiting for you in the pinned comment below. 7 minutes. The frequency you were born with, coming back online. Dr. James Rivers built it for exactly the person you have been in this season, and the person you are crossing the threshold to become. If something stirred in you when I described it in part 1, and again in part 2, and again in part 5, that stirring is your gamma frequency. Recognizing itself, trust it. The link is there when you are ready. And if you know in your heart that today has shifted something, if you feel the difference between the person who pressed play at the beginning of this message and the person who is standing at the threshold right now, I want you to type the words I receive in the comments below. Not as a wish, as an act of opening, as the moment you declare out loud, even in 2 small words, that you are no longer waiting to be given permission to receive what was always meant for you. You are a hope restorer. You are standing at your Kairos threshold, and July 25th is not a day that is coming. It is a day that is here. Step across. Everything you have been waiting for is already on the other side. You made it to the end of this message. And I do not say that as a casual observation. I say it because arriving here, staying through everything that was spoken, letting it land in the real places rather than just passing over the surface of you, that is itself an act of faith. Not everyone who needed this had what it took to stay. You did. And what you did here today matters more than you currently know. I want to leave you with something that is not information and not instruction. It is simply a blessing. The kind that does not ask anything of you in return and does not come with conditions attached. The kind that is spoken over you because you are here and because you showed up and because something in heaven has been waiting for this exact moment to say these exact things into your exact life. You are not who the hard years told you that you were. You are not the sum of what was withheld from you, or the reflection of the rooms that failed to recognize you, or the definition that the long silence tried to write over your identity when you were too tired to argue with it. You are a hope restorer. You were one before today, and you will be one long after this Monday has passed into memory. But today is the day you received the name consciously, and that changes something. A name received consciously becomes an anchor. And you are going to need that anchor in the days ahead. Not because the days ahead will be as hard as the days behind, but because new seasons bring new tests of a different kind. And knowing who you are is the thing that keeps you steady when the new things feel unfamiliar. July 25th is not the finish line. It is the starting line of something that your waiting season was always building toward. The preparation is complete. The appointment is here. The frequency you carry is coming back online. And the world that needs what you carry has been waiting, with a patience that mirrors your own, for you to cross that threshold and begin. I want you to carry 3 things with you when you walk away from this message today. The first is the knowledge that your timing was never broken. It was Kairos, it was appointed. And what is appointed cannot be canceled by delay, cannot be diminished by the years it took to arrive, and cannot be given to someone else. It was always yours. It is still yours. It will be yours on July 25th and on every day that follows it. The second is the permission to receive without bracing. You have spent long enough preparing for impact. Open your hands. Let what is coming land at full size without immediately looking for the catch or managing your own hope back down to a safer level. You are allowed to want this fully. You are allowed to believe it is actually coming. You are allowed to step into what is arriving without the protective layer of qualification you have been keeping around your expectations for years. Receive it, all of it, at full size. The third is the simplest and perhaps the most important. You are not alone in this. The chosen ones who are waking up alongside you, in different places, through different roads, arriving at the same threshold in the same window of time, they are real. This community is real. What was built in the space between this voice and your heart today is real. And it travels with you, across the threshold, into the new season, into the rooms where the hope restorer you are is about to change the temperature simply by walking in. Go gently into what is opening. Go with your hands open and your eyes clear, and the quiet, tested, unextinguishable hope that survived every year of the waiting still burning in you, brighter now than it has been in a long time, because it has been named, and named things have a power that unnamed things do not. You are seen, you are known, you are appointed for this moment, and July 25th is not a day that belongs to someone else who is more ready or more deserving or more prepared. It belongs to you. It has always belonged to you, and it is here. Go, the threshold is already behind you.